If I told you that I made a support Necromancer build, and on that build I was using a melee range power coefficient weapon that didn't heal, didn't apply boons, and didn't cleanse conditions, you'd probably think that I didn't know what I was doing when it came to theory crafting. And, well, you would be right, this build isn't just theory crafting. And not only is it the correct way to use this weapon, it's the strongest weapon that Necromancer has access to by a fairly wide margin for any build that isn't roaming or doing small scale or solo content. This is a video about Necromancer Greatsword, why it's a problem weapon for organized groups, and potentially how to fix it. First, though, let's back up and recap. Prior to Secrets of the Obscure, Greatsword was only usable if you were a Reaper, as it was the signature weapon of that elite specialization. Greatsword is designed as a potent melee range power weapon, with a high damage auto attack chain, an execute style weapon skill 2, and a life force refilling weapon skill 3. Your 4 and 5 abilities, while not significant damage dealers in World vs. World, assist in your ability to lock down and destroy enemies in melee range, with weapon skill 4 pulsing Boon Corrupt in a pool at your feet, and weapon skill 5 pulling enemies towards you from range. And for a long time this was a well-balanced weapon, complementing Reaper's overall profession mechanics for groups that were able to utilize upfront heavy spike melee strategies for winning fights. But over time, a series of nerfs and changes to other professions and weapons have either overlooked or completely ignored Greatsword. And as other weapons have become weaker, Greatsword has only grown more powerful by comparison. The biggest single shift of power, the inflection point if you will, towards Greatsword, was in the June 27th, 2023 patch. I covered that patch on this channel, in fact. I think it was the first balanced patch review that I ever did. So if you want to go back into the archives and look at that, I'll put a link to it in the video description. But this patch did a lot. It's the patch that added Alacrity to Scourge and Druid, but it's also the patch that changed most boon corruption skills into boon removal skills instead. And while these sound similar, boon corruption skills are significantly stronger than boon removal skills for two reasons. First, boon corruption skills don't just remove a boon. They convert it into a condition instead, and some of those conditions are really important. For example, stability corrupts into fear, so not only does getting stability corrupted mean you now have no stability, but it also means you're immediately crowd controlled unless you also have resistance. And second, while boon removal skills will remove boons in the reverse order that they're applied, with more recent boons also being removed first, boon corruption removes boons randomly. When you're playing Firebrand or Chronomancer or other boon supports, it's good practice to follow up the use of high-value skills that apply stability or resistance with low-value skills that apply less important boons like Swiftness or Vigor on top of them. This helps to buffer your important boons against incoming boon removal skills. But true Boon Corrupt doesn't care, and can potentially dig directly to your stability application and convert it into fear, no matter how many cover boons you have. While this is cool from a flavor standpoint, it's also very powerful, and it's just not fun to lose control of your character because an enemy Necromancer spun the boon removal wheel and hit jackpot on your stability. Now, the June 27th patch didn't completely eliminate boon corrupts, it just curtailed a lot of them. Axe 3, Spiteful Spirit, Dagger 5, and Lesser Enfeeble were all changed from boon corrupt abilities to boon removal abilities. So at present, in the World vs. World meta, there's only 8 skills that are true boon corrupts. Scepter 3, but only when traded with Lingering Curse. Shroud 2, when traded with Path of Corruption. Both halves of Sword 3. Lich Form 2. The Corrupt Boon utility skill. The Well of Corruption utility skill. The Elixir of Bliss utility skill. And Greatsword 4, Nightfall. Now that may sound like a lot, but many of these skills have pretty significant drawbacks as well. Scepter 3 and Shroud 2 require you to trait for it by running the Curses trait line, which is otherwise a pretty underwhelming set of traits to run. Lich Form is a 120 second cooldown that only lasts for 20 seconds and makes you a gigantic target while you're in it. And in addition to that, Lich Form 2 and Corrupt Boon are single target abilities that fall off in effectiveness in larger groups. Elixir of Bliss is a projectile that can easily be destroyed or reflected, and Sword 3 is a leap that requires careful targeting to use effectively. It also damages you on the back half of the cast. By comparison, Nightfall has virtually no drawbacks, except that you be in melee range. And not only that, but Nightfall pulses Boon Corrupt, corrupting up to 5 boons every 2 seconds for 8 seconds total. Nightfall is better than most of the boon removal skills that Necromancer has access to, even before you get to the fact that it's a true corrupt and not just a strip. It's a weapon skill that's on par with Well of Corruption, one of Necromancer's strongest utility skills, and that's only after its cooldown was increased twice. At the time of this patch, in 2023, the cooldown on Nightfall wasn't the 40 seconds that it is now, it was just 20. Prior to the June 27th patch, the standard Necromancer weapons were generally double offhand setups, using Axe Focus and Scepter Dagger, with some people playing Staff if they wanted more range utility. But as these weapons got nerfed, either through increasing cooldowns, decreasing boons removed, or changing true corrupts to just strips, Greatsword maintained the same level of power. And this was still only Reapers could utilize it. But this wasn't the only change in the June 27th patch that benefited Greatsword. Boon corrupt skills are strong because they can hit stability out from underneath cover boons. But the reason that stability is so strong is because it prevents crowd control effects. And one of the most powerful crowd control effects that stability helps to prevent is getting pulled. Pulls separate you from the rest of your group, making it difficult for you to get support like boons, condition clears, and healing. And many groups will use pulls either before the start of a fight or during a tactical disengage to try and separate out enemy groups and weaken them before one decisive push. There's only a handful of utility skills in World vs. World that are effective pulls from range when used by coordinated groups. They're Hunter's Verdict, Dragon Hunter's F1 skill, Into the Void, the back half cast of Mesmer Focus 4, Magnet, Engineer's Toolkit skill 5, and Grasping Darkness, Necromancer's Greatsword 5. DHF1 and Magnet are single target 1200 range skills that excel for pulling specific people, like a commander. I know technically DHF1 is multi-target, but it's pretty difficult to get it to line up to pull multiple people at that 1200 range. While Mesmer Focus 4 can reach even further, up to 1500 range. Temporal Curtain can be cast up to 900 range, while the radius on Into the Void is another 600. Or at least that was the case until this patch, which cut the range of Temporal Curtain from 900 down to 600. But even then, a good Temporal Curtain pull will drag an enemy player halfway to your group. 600 off the front half cast, and then another 600 to get the reactivation. Now Grasping Darkness, well, it can only reach 900 total, drags an enemy player directly to where you're standing. And not only that, Grasping Darkness completely disrespects line of sight. It works on walls, it works behind gates, it works up cliffs and downstairs, and sometimes even around corners. At its core, Greatsword is a great power weapon, and it's always going to be one of the best damage choices for a Reaper to use. But the combination of Nightfall and Grasping Darkness are so strong that even if you ignore everything else that Greatsword does, these two skills alone make Greatsword a best-in-slot weapon for virtually every Necromancer build that's used in an organized group. And with the release of Secrets of the Obscure and the Weapon Master feature, the full power of Greatsword was now accessible on any build. Support Scourge ran it during the Barrier meta, while Power Scourge runs it now. Support Harbinger runs it alongside of Staff using Transfuse, and Power Reapers obviously used it since the dawn of time. It's so strong that it stifles build diversity and weapon choices on Necromancer as a profession in World vs. World. And regular viewers of the channel will know that when something is so obviously good that it removes any other decision making about a profession or build, looking at you, Celestial Firebrand, and Celestial Scourge, and Celestial Renegade, that it's something that I think should be changed to make the balance environment healthier overall and promote diverse theory crafting. Now, even in real life, I'm not a fan of complaining for the sake of complaining without having any solution to offer. And I'm not even necessarily complaining about Greatsword, I run Greatsword all the time. So here's my proposal for rebalancing Necromancer Greatsword if I were making profession balance decisions for Guild Wars 2 and World vs. World specifically. Let's start with Greatsword 4, Nightfall. Thematically, Boon Corruption is a cool mechanic. And thematically, I like the idea of skills that punish a group that overcommits into melee without respecting another group's damage. I want to preserve Nightfall's ability to utilize both of these effects. But 20 Boon Corrupts in total is a lot. So instead, replace the 1 Corrupt per target per pulse effect that Nightfall currently has with 2 Corrupts per target, but only on the initial cast, and then leave the Blindness and Cripple intact for all of the subsequent pulses. This lets Nightfall retain its role as a melee punish boon corrupt skill, and even makes the initial cast of the skill a bit more dangerous, but it mitigates the sheer volume of boons that it corrupts in its current form. Then, for Greatsword 5, Grasping Darkness, the fact that it can pull through walls, gates, and up and down terrain that isn't otherwise traversable is unique among pulls, and it means that groups aren't necessarily safe to do as they please just because they're inside an objective. Given how strong that unique effect is, you could just reduce the target cap on Greatsword 5 down to 1, and you could preserve that unique utility. Greatsword 5 is still something that you can utilize for opening up gaps and creating spacing against an enemy group, or punishing players inside a tower who are manning arrow carts in a dangerous position, but it now requires a bit of coordination, so that your Necromancers all use it at the same time. This creates interesting counterplay for an enemy group in knowing when they need to apply stability and when they can be relatively safe at range. So these two changes slightly lower the overall power of Greatsword, and start to introduce some more flexible weapon alternatives into that equation. With these nerfs to Nightfall and Grasping Darkness, groups that want to maximize their boon removal ability are now incentivized to go back to running double offhand setups, as Axe Focus and or Sword Focus should both generate higher overall strips than Greatsword currently does. Plus, Sword 3 is still a unique boon corrupt effect rather than just a boon strip. On the other hand, groups that are looking to utilize the Transfuse trait to use support Necromancer builds are already locked into using Staff, but Warhorn is a decent support weapon, and something that a support-oriented Necromancer would love to use if given the opportunity. But for both of these decisions, Greatsword is still a viable weapon choice thanks to its access to true corrupts and a great single-target pull. The point is that this weapon selection decision now comes down to how individual players, and individual squads, want to utilize Necromancers in their groups, rather than just having Greatsword be the de facto selection regardless of comp or role. Don't get me wrong, I love Greatsword. I've been playing Reaper since long before the June 27th patch, and I was running Greatsword Scourge the day that it became a possibility in Secrets of the Obscure. Greatsword 5 is one of my favorite buttons to press in the entire game, across any profession. But I also want to make interesting decisions about my weapon selections when I'm thinking of new Necromancer builds to play. And Greatsword has become so powerful over time that there's no real decisions left to make for that weapon anymore. Specifically when you also want to use Transfuse and you get locked into Staff as your other weapon thanks to how that trait works. I don't expect CMC to watch this video and immediately push a patch that implements these exact changes, but I do want to initiate a discussion about where Necromancer Greatsword is in the current world versus world meta, and see what other people think of the weapon as well. This is a new style of video for me, so if you liked it and you want to see more, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I really do use those metrics when I'm figuring out what I want to spend my time on when I'm making YouTube videos. If there's another weapon, trait, or utility skill that you think I could profile instead, or you disagree with me about the strength of Necro Greatsword, drop me a comment and let me know your thoughts. I also stream on Twitch every Tuesday, Wednesday, and sometimes over the weekend, so you could drop in there as well if you want to see me find new and degenerate spots to use Greatsword 5 to ruin people's day. But until then, I've been Chef, and enjoy the rest of your day.